Trigger warning. This video discusses suicide and mental health struggles. Some viewers may find this content distressing. Please prioritize your well being. If you or someone you know is struggling, help is available. You can reach out to a suicide and crisis hotline for support.
Hi everyone, welcome back to our podcast Sugar, Spice, and Everything Chaos. We really appreciate your support during this time and for all the episodes that you're watching. And I think we have a very interesting topic today, and that's something that's like really hot topic that we all want us to talk about. So let me ask Pauline to introduce our topic.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Hope you're doing well. So, we're going to talk about something that is an age old topic that all of us are always talking about, but then we don't really get anywhere with it because it's a very um, complicated topic. What we're going to talk about today is basically marriage, the construct of marriage, the marriage as an institution, marriage as a legal binding, and what marriage actually means in a person's life. So, to kind of get started with, I thought we look at like the textbook definition of marriage from like a sociology textbook, a very introductory, definition, and then we'll kind of get started with talking about marriage from our personal perspectives, and then get to a place where we reach that what the problem is, how we could get to a place where it no longer is a problem. Now, the definition that I was talking about. So, marriage, the very straightforward definition of it in a sociology textbook would be defined as the license to have sex, right? So, it's really not something to do with love. It's really not something to do with family understanding. It's more so to do with the politics of sex. We're talking about controlling someone's sexuality, controlling someone's uh, paternity and maternity. So it's kind of coming from this idea that it's very straightforward when you ask someone who their mother is, because there's a physical proof that this is this person's mother. But the question of who is your father, that is a question mark until like recent science developed paternity tests and so on, right? So because in the olden times there was no paternity test that was like scientifically accurate, they needed marriage so that they could monitor the movement of women when it comes to their sex life, so that it's easier to say this is the father, and obviously it's you know very easy and obvious to say this is the mother. Now, the problem is this was the mentality of people back in the day. But then today in 2026, our mentality, our mindset still hasn't changed. Our attitude towards marriage, our attitude towards sex remains the same. And we are going to confront this question of, should it remain the same? Should we change? And also, why is it still such a taboo thing to talk about? I think before we kind of get to that, I'll ask you, Anne, what do you think marriage is about?
I think since I am at an age where everybody is asking about marriage, but of course, I am somebody who would like to explore this, whatever I do, I intended to do it with purpose and for an intention that is for the right reasons, right? But for me, marriage is, I think, if I have to be positive, I think it's about having somebody to support you, to having somebody to share your life with. And I think this is something that I often explain to my girlfriends is build a life together. So not just with romantic relationship or a marriage, but also with anybody or with, it is basically building a life together. So the whole thing against the negative thing that I have against marriage is what she was saying, right? That it is a very political thing, that it's how it started with. They wanted to control women, they wanted to control people's, sexuality and how who they have sex with and all of that. And I think that is a very, appropriate thing even at today's society. That you will see these caste-based marriages and wanting to marry within your status, within your caste, within your this one. It's a very common expression that you will see in families wanting to look for boys within that particular thing. But then what they don't understand is that what they know, nobody in this marriage economy or the market or the business, the marriage whole booming business, nobody cares about what the person wants, whether the person will be happy, whether the person will be supported, whether the person will be able to raise a good family, a good generation going forward. So I think that is something that I feel is about marriage. A lot of people don't talk about.
Hmm. Like there are these, the conservative people, the traditional people who also kind of introduce marriage to, like, they control the girl children in the family to the point where it's so suffocating. But then when it comes to marriage, like till 20, they don't let you talk to any boys. They don't let you, read any romance. They're very, they're very involved in your private life. And then suddenly you turn 20 or something, 23, whatever, and then they're like, okay, now you need to get married. And a lot of girls have this fear that, okay, I've never spoken to boys before, what do I do? And then the way that it is framed is, the elders, they care about the pleasures of the girl. So marriage life is something that gives you some happiness, and what they really kind of are, insinuating here is sex. So sex is something you need right now, because if you don't have it, you're going to be frustrated, and so we need to get you married. But then again, like, because of the lack of education, right, sex education and emotional education, this is not something that the elders are also clear with, but this is what they intend for the younger generation when they say, you get married, your marriage would be better than mine. And you need marriage because, like, if you don't get married, you can't experience this at all. But like, thankfully, with like the technological advancements and all that, what you see is, with the younger generation today, they start dating very early on. And co-education institutions are more common. So what you see is the mystery around the opposite gender is slowly dissipating. It's not as it used to be, right? It's not like, oh boy, no, now okay, boy, it's easy to get into someone's DM. It's easy to get access to other sorts of information that you want to know about the opposite sex. So now Gen Z is kind of at this place where they understand marriage is kind of scary. They understand marriage is very pointless, because you can do whatever marriage has to offer without actually taking the responsibility of marriage, right? So I see this shift happening with the younger generation where marriage, maybe they don't want it, but all of them are excited about the idea of weddings, because weddings, you have like 7 days of celebration. You get to like do. I think there was even a trend, I think, in between, where young people were faking, weddings. So they didn't want marriage, but then they wanted to have like albums, photo albums, where they are young and they're dressed up and they look good, because they understand that when you're older, it's not going to be the same. So they just did like a wedding photo shoot, so that like they could, even whether they get married, whether they find love, doesn't matter, but they had a wedding when they were young, when they had like the hot body that they did. So you do see like shifts in the way that we perceive uh marriage, right?
Definitely. I guess, with the Gen Zs, I think they have a very good understanding and a very good exposure to a global phenomenon. Like, for example, if I have to talk about the UK, for being Indians, we always saw foreigners as somebody who is more westernized, whose ways of living is more not very cultural according to according to Indian society. They're not very cultural, is what we perceived. But you will see a
Hmm.
lot of people in the UK, at least that's what I know. A lot of them are married very early on, around 21, 22, 23, and they already have two children by then. So, and then
Hmm.
most of them are able to stay within the marriage, and the divorce rates are not, I mean, of course, they have the capacity to come out of a relationship if it's not working out for them and if it's not benefiting the relationship, nor the family or the children. So, this idea of having to have a choice whether to stay or leave, whether to marry, when to marry, how to marry, and all who to marry, these choices have been existing in the Western community for a longer time. But because the Gen Zs have been currently been exposed to the global, situation, that they see that as an option right now, which we couldn't see probably 10, 20 years before, that we didn't see that as an option. And of course, we saw foreigners as somebody who is like uncultured. Right.
Hmm.
So, but I don't know. It again comes down to priorities. I would say that, it comes down to what do you want from a marriage? Because most people will not be able to answer this question. Why are you getting married? If you ask a simple question to any people who's getting married or who are already married, why did you get married? Most often people will say my parents asked me to because I was at the age that I am supposed to. What else am I supposed to do other than getting married at the age of 28, 25, 26? So the thing is, why don't you have an answer to that question? See, I understand it's a very difficult question to answer, but then why don't you have an answer? Why don't you sit with that and ask why are you getting married? I think that is my thing to, to the listeners, I guess.
I completely agree with you because I think, marriage in India, the way that it's arranged and everything, is a perfect way to avoid being vulnerable. So, if you actually had to feel good about yourself, there's a lot of internal work that needs to be done, right? You need to know who you are, you need to sit with your shadow, you need to do all that. But an easy way to kind of avoid doing this is to get good marks, to marry into a wealthy family, to have children by the the standards set by society, to make sure those children are getting like private education, to make sure those children are in good health, and when the time comes, getting them married and seeing the grandchildren. So this format, if you follow, you don't really have to be a good person, you don't really have to be a kind commonsensical person, you just have to do all these things. It's like a checklist. When you do them, you get to automatically get external validation. Self-esteem will be at an all-time low because you don't know why you're doing it. You're just basically doing it for social validation. And it's easy, right? Like, I have a life, I need people to like keep looking at me and to keep appreciating me. So what I will do is blindly follow the script, the blueprint. So, like this concept of midlife crisis and things that we talk about, the reason a lot of people have it is because they don't think about how this is not the right way to go about it. A lot of people end up in marriages that are very complacent. It's boring. They think, marriage is not that great. This is how it is. We're just sitting. He's reading the newspaper. I'm making the coffee. We're just doing like, role plays, right? He plays the husband, I play the wife, and it's very simple. But can you like imagine how this is such a soul sucking thing to do for the rest of your life? Like, oh my God, like you can't be yourself. You can't have thoughts that are original. You have to be stereotypical. You have to be this person who's like, do you know what the neighbor's husband got him, got her? And you have to keep comparing. If your relatives are getting one car that's 7 lakhs, you have to get a car that's 12 lakhs. Like, why do you want to get caught up in this life where you're constantly looking for external validation? Right? We've seen our grandparents do it, we've seen our parents do it, and now as the younger generation, shouldn't we do something different?
And yeah, shouldn't we
So,
do something that is sensible? I would say, like, I mean, we are currently as younger generation for not getting married at a certain age, and for asking these questions, they are blaming us. But I am asking a
Mhm.
question to you back, like, why? What did I do wrong other than having common sense? I am asking the right question. If it's hurting you so much, if it's triggering you so much, that is not my problem, right? If you couldn't take that responsibility and get out of a relationship, maybe because for whatever reason, so you see, like you brought up the example of grandparents, like at that time the grandparents, that they had to stay together because they didn't have a choice. At least the lady didn't have a choice to go out and work because she financially and emotionally and all sorts of dependent was on the man. Like I remember, like, my grandmother used to say that, that she had this vision. She got a job in the railways. Okay, and then she went and told my grandfather that she has got a job with the railways. It's like a letter has come, I want to go work. And then he said no, right? So when they say no, of course there's no point in going above it because he's not going to agree to it at all. So you see, then a shift came. Then the parents had a choice of education. Some had education and then they had a chance to go and work, but then still they were confined to the roles that you were saying, that they have to play the roles. They have to play the role of a wife, they have to play the role of a husband, dominant, submissive, and these things keeps going on. And right now, we women are at a place where we don't have to do that. They were on survival. They didn't have a chance to go out and say, okay, you are saying no to getting a job. I am going to go and get the job no matter what. Right. So we have a choice. And shouldn't you from previous generation be happy for us that we have a choice? Why is it triggering you?
I think like I speak on behalf of them here. I think they are scared. they're so used to seeing a familiar thing, right? Everyone they know has done the same thing. So now when you say you're going to do something different, I think it's coming from a place of love only, right? Where they're like, so, okay, you're saying you're going to be happy. You're saying you're going to be fine. But, like, how would you be fine? How would they know that you'd be fine? Because they've not lived that reality, right? So, even this thing of like education and things, I think our parents had to have a lot of fear when they told us, go do this, right? So to have daughters abroad, to have daughters who are like out on their own doing their things, there's a lot of like fear that's there, like what if something goes wrong. There's a lot of like prayers that they send, good intentions that they send, because they know how dangerous the world is for daughters. So there is care, there is a lot of concern. But my question is uh, to the younger generation here. uh, don't let the fears of your parents and your grandparents stop you from changing your generational family line. Like, why would you? Yes, their fears are there, but doesn't mean the fear is logical, right? Like, yeah, okay, they are saying this out of concern, like, because we're at that marriageable age right now. A lot of conversations happen at home where it's like, I'm saying this for your good, get married, it's going to be okay, trust us and all that. But then at the same time, they also understand that marriages fail every day. Like, the current situation that's happening everywhere is that families don't have understanding, and family systems are not as simple as before, where it was the husband who had more power, wife who had less power, right? Now both men and women have equal power, and a lot of men do not really know what that means, because they're expecting the women to still be submissive, right? So I think we need to kind of sit and talk about what a future marriage could look like, if marriage is even relevant in the future, right? We're kind of getting into the zone where cohabitation, living in relationships are becoming more common. We're also seeing this thing of like roommate situations where you like, it's not really romantic, aromantic relationships are also becoming common. Just because when you share a room and you're sharing like the load together, it's financially smart. A lot of people back in the day, they were married for financial reasons. You needed financially to depend on someone, and then marriage came in. Uh, but now you can financially depend on someone through understanding. You don't need marriage to do that. So it's a romantic relationship where there's no romance, no sex, nothing involved. But then you're sharing a room, and then it's just a financially wise decision you're making. So I think, like, moving forward, we as young people are smart enough to not give in to the fear of like, oh, what it could happen. And then, so it's not like a game of musical chair where when the music stops, you just sit down and like settle for the first person that like can place yourself on, right? So uh, maybe the next question we should be discussing in this episode is, how do you, like, now that we discuss what to not do when you're getting married, like, these are the wrong reasons to get married for. What do you think are the right reasons to get married? Like, what should the young people be doing if there is a strong desire for a companionate love, for a love where they want to have a family, they want to build something together, like you said. How do they go about that?
So I think from what you were saying, I was just thinking about this podcast that I was watching the other day, and if there was this one line, parents these days have given daughters a wing to fly. They made them independent, they made them smart, they made them educated. But the problem is they never taught the sons how to live with such daughters. You know,
Mm.
they didn't know, they didn't teach how to be a husband, how to be a partner for these women. That is the main problem, that there's a higher incompatibility in that quotient. There's this empowered women, and there's like men who are still holding on to values from the early centuries, and they are being put into marriage, and they are like looking at this woman, and they are looking at their mother, and then their only reference to marriage comes from how their mother was, how their the previous generation was, and they look at the current generation woman and they see the mismatch and they think, okay, we must be wrong, their mothers must be not wrong, we must be wrong, you know. And I think to instead of addressing the woman, we need to address the men who are watching, or men who should be watching this, is that, are you open to living with such a woman? Are you open to this change that is happening? Because your mother did not have a choice to walk out of such a situation that she was in. You know, you cannot expect to have your wife who is just like your mother. That has to change. At a baseline, it has to change. Your mother had suffered a lot, and you cannot expect your wife to suffer as well. For that, let that sit and sink with it. And after we understand that you're not going to get a wife who's like your mother, now are you open to having this empowered woman into your life? Are you wanting this woman just because of the way she's attractive, just because you want to show the world that you have a wife? Or are you getting married because you know her family is giving you a lot of money, a lot of dowry? Ask the right question. If these are the reasons you're getting married, definitely you're going to abuse that woman. And if these are the reason a guy is getting married to you, he is going to abuse you. So I think these are the things that we need to set it right. Like I understand, like as I'm at the age where I am getting married, but instead of coming from a very defensive position, like I don't want to get married, but I am saying this because I have been in years of therapy. I have been reading a lot of things related to the social constructs and things like that. And yeah, there was a time in my life as well where I thought, okay, why don't I just get married? You know, I was looking very actively for a guy, and I thought, okay, the first one I get, I thought I'll settle down, you know. And I was very much into this marriage because that was the only thing I heard all the time. When I wake up to when I sleep, I they made me seem like I'm imperfect, and there's there's a problem with me. So of course I was forced into it. And then there was a moment when I stopped myself and said, okay, Mary, why are you getting married? Why do you want to get married? And then I paused. I didn't have an answer. So I told myself, I will get married when I have that answer. So, yeah.
Like one thing that I want to talk about here is how do you identify, marriages? How do you identify patterns in marriages? If you see a woman who's married and she's happy and she's like very generous with her time and attention, she's not just sitting and criticizing others, she's just genuinely happy, then
Hmm.
you know she's married to like a competent man. She's
Hmm.
married to a man who's taking up like emotional and cognitive load at home. He's probably coming up with his own grocery list. He's probably going and helping out with the kids. He's an involved parent and a husband. But if you see a woman who's like extremely mean spirited, she's very intolerable, not very kind, just very frustrated, right? There's a high chance that she's married to a loser,
Hmm.
someone who expects her to be not just a wife who will go to bed with him, but after she's done, she has to go and be his mother and take care of everything around him, right? So for a woman to actually have a man like this in her life, it's living hell, right? So you want a partner who would equally like do things with you, who would build something together with you, but then instead this man is just a lazy man who expects his wife to make his life just beautiful, because this is like the story they sell in Tamil cinema and like I don't know, in cultural narratives here, where they say one girl will come into your life and black and white will become color, right? Like what delusion is this? What is this weird fantasy you guys have? Come back to reality. Stop being losers. Work on yourself. It's not enough that you just go hit the gym is great, nice body, appreciate it, but like you need to have discipline, you need to have character, you need to have values that align with the life that the girl that you marry is going to have. So if you want like a pretty happy, fun loving, just intelligent woman, right? Know that you have to be equally that, or don't even approach her, right? Don't be smart about it, don't be deceptive about it, because like why would you want to make someone bitter like that? So I think that's something that I want all of you to reflect on. Think about like people who are married right now, and notice patterns so that you can start working on it yourself.
See, one thing comes to my mind. I think this might be not very taken very nicely by people. But then this was a conversation I was having with my mother yesterday. So I said, we were discussing about a particular family and then saying that, why that relationship is working out. And then
Mhm.
I said that, if you are dumb, if you are dumb, timid, scared, and you don't have good self esteem, and that's how you grew up, and you will be okay with the man who is from who is existing, most majority existing right now. You will be able to survive with that man because you have the same pattern that you had with your household, which because her father, the girl's father, didn't allow her to you know engage with any men growing up. She studied in a girls school, girls college. She was picked up from the bus stop to the home, and then she was only allowed to go in a women only bus and all of that. Okay, so then she got married right after college. She did not have a time to breathe. She did not have gone out of her house without her parents. Okay, and then she got married into a family where she's of course a master's, but then she didn't use her education. But then her husband was earning well, and he used to take care of everything, and she used to be this person where it's like, I don't know anything, and literally she does not know anything, and she used to go around him. So I feel like if you are a smart, capable, independent thinking women, or if you had that phase in your life, you will not be able to survive with a man, who's coming with ancient beliefs. But if you're dumb,
Yeah.
you definitely can survive with the ancient man with such sort of a belief. So I think, um, I'm not being saying that you are dumb or this one. It again comes down to exposure. It's just that it becomes livable because that is the environment you're very familiar with. The father who was being provider, then the husband becomes a provider. It's a very familiar environment for you, so it becomes easier for you to adapt. So again, I'm not saying that you have to, everyone does not have to be independent. Everyone does not have to be have the life that you are living, but you need to understand what kind of a person you are. And when you understand this is the kind of person you are and this can't be molded into something that's submissive, then of course go for a man who is able to hold that space for you, where you are being yourself, independent, and having that power within a relationship. If that's important to you, know that. Don't go for a man and then say, I will change him. No.
That's delusion, children. Don't be delusional. We cannot change anyone. So I think like I would just want to, re-emphasize what you just said. It is true. If you have low self-esteem, there is a high chance that you will attach yourself to a relationship just to get some self-esteem from it. So what's the alternative to doing this, messy thing? It's to actually work on yourself, figure out who you are as a person, build your own personality first. And as Anne was pointing out, that would require you to, have more exposure to life, to loss, to love, to other things. And you would have to expand your mind, right? And the more your mind is expansive, the more you are able to actually figure out what you like, what you don't like, what you want, what you don't want, what you think would make you happy, but what you think would make you content, what you think would make you feel satisfied. So these are all like existential questions that you would encounter in this pathway. But once you figure it out, right, one thing that might happen is you might kind of get to a place where you're like, you know what, I think I've worked on myself enough to love myself now. Like, not in the way that it's just self care, but you look at yourself in the mirror and you're like, oh, I like what I see. I've suffered so much, and now I've become this person who is disciplined, who's become this person who's gracious, humble, but then at the same time I'm competent. So when you see this version of yourself right looking at you right in front of you, you know that this is the kind of person who is easy to love, because this is a person who's so human, right? So once you reach this point, I think it's easy for you to kind of identify people who are like you. And once you again meet them and do something, it would not be obviously, like this thing of like arranged marriage where you get into it and then society would tell you a bunch of things and you just blindly follow. But it would be something that's self-directed, right? You and your partner together get to decide what your life is going to be like. It's going to be independent, it's going to be different, it is going to be something that most people will not understand. You will not act your age. You will be 40-year-olds with children, but then you would also be like 40-year-olds who are enjoying their life. You'll go to the gym together, you'll go on vacations together. You might not buy houses, but you might buy other things, because those are the things that's important for you. You might do things very differently, but then at the end of the day, you might actually be building something that's like meaningful to just the both of you. But to get to the both of you, you need to first figure out who you are. And as lonely as it's going to be, you're also going to meet other people who are non-romantic, who will make your life very meaningful. So I think I would challenge you here. Would you be willing to dare yourself to do this? Would you dare yourself to kind of step out of your comfort zone a little bit to maybe take a chance at love? Not marriage. Marriage is easy. Any Tom, Dick, and Harry can do it. But to actually be vulnerable enough to put yourself out there and then see if love can find you.
Another thing is, for many people, the problem with getting into a wrong relationship or a wrong marriage is because their reference points. It see what she was saying about, building your self worth, knowing yourself, working on yourself, building a life where you look at yourself and love yourself so much, right? But many of them go from a place where we got abusive environments at home, and then that is a reference point for being loved or getting love or attention, and then a guy appears with such kind of a similar, push and pull sort of a love, and then you think, okay, it's the same thing, it's familiar, okay, I'm in love, okay, dopamine hits and you're done. But instead, you have to, the only way to break this pattern by putting yourself in the middle and saying, okay, now let me love myself. How do I treat myself? How do I let others treat me? How do I let others, validate me? Where do I put myself? What sort of a situation I should walk away from? What kind of a relationship I should walk away from? When you are able to give yourself the right kind of love, and you will know when a guy appears, and if he falls short of that love, you will be able to detect and say, okay, no, this is not what I want. I've had more than what you are offering when I love myself, sort of a thing. So I think it's a good, on a ending note, I just want to say that, try to build yourself, build a life with you, where you're happy, where you're content, where you are completely in abundance, and you don't work from scarcity. And when you are abundant and joyful and loving, you will attract people who are just like that into your life. And when that happens, you'll be able to click. And when that click happens, when you feel like, okay, this is somebody who I want to, spend spend some time with and spend my life with, do things with him. When that happens, of course, marriage is something that you believe in. Of course, go for it. So I
Yeah, I
think
think this is like advice that both boys and girls can take. If anyone was to come to you and say, if you don't love me, I will cut myself, I will do all that nonsense, call the police, report it to the police. That person is not okay. That person is mentally unstable. Don't feel sorry for broken people. Don't waste your time on broken people. If you're the one doing this, seek mental health support, right? You're not alone, right? You deserve love. Everything can work out if you are willing to work on it yourself. So I think we're kind of at the end of the episode. And all that we want to say is like, stay positive, do not lose hope. Things are, going to ebb and flow. Things are not going to be, good all the time or bad all the time. But one thing you can do as a favor to yourself is like stay honest. At least to yourself, tell the truth so that you know what you want in life. You don't need marriage to be happy. Honestly, you don't need it, but you do need healthy relationships to be happy, right? So yeah, figure out how to get into healthy relationships.
So I think it's a good place to stop. And we do give your comments about marriages and things like that. This is a topic that we need everyone to talk about. So we also know what is happening around the world, what kind of things are going around the world. So yeah, we will see you again for another important episode going forward. And until next time, take care. Bye.
Bye.